Well, g'day, folks. How you going? Hope you're having a very, well, warm Tuesday night. Bloody cold Tuesday morning, I can tell you. Froze me bits off this morning. Yesterday, wasn't feeling terribly flash, but it seems that whatever was afflicting me has departed me, and the rest of the day, today at least, has gone very well. So apologies for last night. Thank you for so many people for making contact after the show that I did from the airport. I'm still processing it. There was a lot that came through to me through our conversations at the airport the other night, and I think probably a lot more was downloaded into me through other ways or means or whatever. I'm trying to figure a way of calling it giving it a name that isn't spiritual, but I have no other way of coming up with a name for it. There was a spiritual element, large spiritual element to what was going on with that chat the other night at the Brisbane airport. And while there is a lot of information that I received there, it was more, I was going to say personal, but it's not personal information. But what I was told doesn't really relate to the Voice of Freedom or to us. It was more an overview of what's going on and placement of where Ulikai and what he is working for is in the world. And I'm very confident and comfortable now that I'm pretty confident that we're working on the same side. And they have a very interesting story to tell. Is it the story? I don't know, but it will be a story that I think we should all hear, and is what's coming up in the future. We are going to have a lot of things put to us. We're going to have a lot of opportunities to look at new things, and this, I think, will play a big part of our growth going forward. So let's put it on the side burner for a minute. There are a few more conversations that are going to take place. We have a basic plan of how we would like to bring some of this information to you, but it is only a basic plan at the moment. I'm going to work to try and get that together next week, and hopefully in the not too distant future, we will start having some conversations with Juma, with Ulikai, and with others about our First Nations people. And really, if you're an Australian, a natural born on this land Australian, they have some very interesting ancestral comments you might like to be listening to and availing yourself of as well. So that'll come in days and weeks ahead. I watched back my live from the airport the other night, and I'm a bit embarrassed. It was quite weird. I walked around that airport for 10 or 15 minutes after we had a chat in the rain, just walking, thinking. I can't even tell you what I was thinking about. I'd stop, I'd look up, I'd walk around in circles again for a few minutes, and look up, and then I figured out I was doing it in the rain. Just weird, really weird. And I was left with a feeling of, I felt like I'd been downloaded into. Does that make sense? It didn't really to me at the time, but it was really the only, and still is the only way I can really describe it. So I'm still working on that. I'm sorry I haven't been able to get probably a better handle on it so far. So I'm working on it, and you haven't heard the last of it. Rest assured. Hello to everybody. Sunflower. First one in the room tonight. Yeah, okay. Well, there you go. You've heard a bit about the meeting at the airport. So I met Ulikai, King Ulikai, Juma, who is the lawman of Larrakia land, which is Darwin, Northern Territory. And when I was talking to him, he was heading back to Darwin that night, and I said, so you got to head back to the land. And he said, I am the land. He is. And from what my research has led me to believe, that isn't an untrue statement. He is the lawman for Larrakia, and he has some amazing skills, some amazing abilities, I think is probably the best way to put that. And one of those abilities is to look at you and to look deep into you and look at your soul. That's what I felt. And I didn't feel it in a bad way. It was a good thing. So I like to think that there is a lot more there coming our way, and everything is information. I'm not lining up behind or lining up to support anything in any particular fashion in this regard. But I am interested in learning more about the position that these guys are taking, and we will do that in the days and weeks ahead. I do promise you. Dave O's in the house. Thank you, Dave, for coming in again. Keefe, nice to hear the Roys are back in town. Daniel Weir. Now, I starred one of your comments that I saw before the show. Daniel, what's this? You had a public servant attempt to dominate and embarrass you in public a few hours ago. Big mistake and a big backfire. Did you record it? Did you video that? We've got to fight back against these public servants, and in part, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. You know that I've been heavily involved with My Place, well, not since its inception, but since we went down to Victoria. We met up with Darren Bergwerf. He welcomed us with open arms into the My Place arena, and we found a home there, and that's the way that I feel. I'm as protective of My Place, probably more so than Darren in some ways. So when news comes through that a group of My Places have banded together and are starting to do something extremely special, it makes me very proud. It should make Darren Bergwerf bursting with pride. It also makes me extremely proud that one of the blokes who is involved with the group who is doing this is a fellow who I've known now probably for nearly 12 months or so. I wish I had known this man for the 3 or 4 years that I lived about 2 kilometres from him. But it was only after I left the Sunshine Coast that, or was about to leave the Sunshine Coast, that I got to meet Camilo. So Camilo has played in our chat here tonight and many other nights. You've seen him chatting, and he always has good comments to make. He is a genuinely wonderful man, and I'd like to welcome him on for the first time to the Voice of Freedom. How are you, Camilo?
G'day, Carl.
So, mate, further to last time we were having a chat, I've made some adjustments. I have the Voice of Freedom hat.
Yep.
And if really required, I do have the mustache. But
wonderful.
You know, I'm sort of thinking Mario's mustaches. Yeah. Well, Mario's mustache has got to be grey by now.
Tan it black.
Yeah. We'll get out with the texter. See how we can do that. Mate, it's been very exciting to see what has happened in, Queensland. So you're based in Nambour, but let's talk My Place places. So on the Sunshine Coast, on and around the Sunshine Coast, let's start from the north. There's Gympie, there's Noosa. Out west, there is Maleny. Then there's, coming back into the coast, there is Nambour, Mooloolaba, and then Caloundra.
Cool.
Is that right?
Callum.
Oh, Callum. I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Callum. So that's a pretty good spread.
Beerwah.
Oh, new one coming up in Beerwah. There you go.
Yeah.
Haven't heard about
I
that.
believe they've been up and running for a little bit.
Excellent. Now, the thing that's got me is that distance isn't terribly big for people on the Sunshine Coast to travel to meet other members of other My Places, and the lines of suburbia are pretty well blurred, I suppose is the best way of putting it. So you don't really have to go and come to your local. If you don't want to go to your local, you can go to any My Place that you want. The thing is, you're all building a community. Now, we are aware that the Sunshine Coast Council has an interesting way of doing things, certainly dealing with people. There is a litany of things that people are upset with the Sunshine Coast Council about. However, the latest and greatest, I think, problem that they have made for themselves is trying to throw 3 families who are in tiny homes, purpose-built tiny homes, who are on private land owned by a lady who says they are welcome to stay there for as long as they like on her land.
Correct.
But the council has said, bad luck, you've got to get them off. I think it's by the end of this month, isn't it, Cam?
They were given till the end of August, but after pressure by us groups, but one group in particular, they've now rescinded that August and given them a little bit longer whilst they do more investigations.
Right. Well, that's something that council needs to do. But unfortunately, it's very rare that the councillors do the investigation. It's the bloody bureaucrats that live inside these council offices and think they have the power. Now, what they've been able to do is orchestrate this bullshit through bureaucracy. Look, we had one complaint because the caravan doesn't look nice from the road. I guarantee you I can drive down streets in Mooloolaba, in Maroochydore, in Nambour, and probably in Callum, Peregian and Noosa, which have eyesores on the street, eyesores on the land. Is council going and doing anything about those? No, unlikely.
The other excuse they're using is it's contravention of the Town Planning Act.
Oh, right. What about contravention of the humanitarian laws in the world?
Well, that's what so the My Place groups that you mentioned, there's myself and Greg. We are the main instigators. We're the ones writing all the documentation and researching the Local Government Act, the Corporations Act, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and a few other. What do we got? The International Covenant on Economic and Social Cultural Rights, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, International Declaration of Human Rights. And we've looked at all of them, and in our submission to the council, we've actually mentioned that they are in contravention of all those international treaties. So what we did is we put out a letter to all My Place groups and other community groups, Stand in the Park, and there's lots of other, your Lifeline groups and your neighbourhood centres, all those groups we've been out and visited and made connections with, and put out this letter basically telling them how we're approaching it from a humanitarian perspective.
Yeah.
And we've put together a little register where we don't want names or anything on the register. We just want all these community groups who are dealing with homelessness to write down how many people come through their services on a weekly basis. The idea behind that is that when we send this letter or give this letter to the CEO, we know that they're going to turn around and they're going to say something stupid like, well, where's all your evidence? And we'll just turn around and say, well, there's the evidence, mate. And then show them a copy of the human rights declarations and everything else. The fact that they've broken Section 180 of the Corporations Act, the fact that they've broken Section 4, Section 70, Section 80, Section 11 and Section 12 of the Local Government Act of 2009, and also to 1993, because under 1993, Section 164, which I've used in the past to sack a previous council who were acting corruptly, they've amended that section and changed it in the 2009 amended Local Government Act, and they've taken certain bits out of it that take responsibility on the local councils. But in Section 113 of the new Act, the ability to dissolve a council if you can prove conflict of interest, corruption, or that they haven't served their community the way they're supposed to, you can then appeal to the local government minister or the local parliament via your local member and ask them to investigate. Now, what's interesting is that looking at the 2009 Local Government Act, even though they've taken away Section 164, right down the very end of the 200-page Word document, it actually says, in some circumstances, the repealed Act of 1993 can be used.
That's a bit weird.
Yes, it is. And
Does it outline what sections of the repealed Act?
I'm going to look at that further and then find out exactly what they mean by that, because if they mean they've taken out section 164, where you have the ability under a petition to petition your local government minister and kick out your council if you feel they haven't lived up to their, expectations.
Yep.
Then we could probably use that to our advantage.
Now, you've used that before, haven't you, though, Cam?
I've done that before, yes, in 2008.
Right.
With the Fraser Coast Council.
Right. So just explain briefly what happened there and what you achieved.
Okay. So in 2008, when local councils were removed and they were formed into an amalgamation, and they formed, say, the Fraser Coast Regional Council, which was made up of the Tyro Council, the Maryborough Council, Hervey Bay Council, and part of the Childers Council, because what they did is they split Childers into half. So half of Childers went to Bundaberg, half of Childers went to Fraser Coast. So prior to that, they were all local councils and local aldermen. They weren't councillors, they were called aldermen. Okay, so one of the gentlemen, and I ran for council at the time, and I also ran as a state member, and I was made aware that certain things that they were doing looked to me to be very suspicious. Yeah. One of them being a development at Eli Waters as you come into Hervey Bay. And I found out that there were like 3 or 4 councillors, including the mayor, had their hands in the pie with the developer, and they made these little agreements with the developer to turn what was swampland into a prestigious estate. The problem was that after the developer built it, we had that big flood, and half the bloody development went underwater.
Yeah.
And the poor people in there didn't have a bloody any way to be compensated for their damage. So I went after the mayor and I went after the council for corruption. And the mayor at the time had a drinking problem. And he was found spending a lot of his days in the pub, turning up at council meetings half drunk. So on that, I did a petition, and I went out into the streets and I collected about 6,000 signatures from the district. I went to the local TV station, Channel 7 at the time, Channel 9, and the local paper, and there's clippings that I can pull out if you like, showing me standing there with petitions and asking the local government minister under Section 164 to step in. Now, this whole process took about 6 months before something was done, because it had to go to the local government minister. Then the local government minister had to look at it, and she sent out some people to investigate. They said there was nothing there. So I then wrote back via my local member at the time, who was an independent member for Maryborough. And with his help, he took it to Parliament and brought it up in Parliament and basically forced the local government minister's hand. And they had to come and do another audit and basically found that there was bad things going on in the government, and they sacked them under the provisions of the Local Government Act.
Wow.
And a new mayor and CEO, and I think a couple of councillors got the boot as well. The problem was that 12 months later, the new mayor ended up in the same position. He got moved out because he was fudging the books. So then they had another one because he had to step down, and then another mayor stepped in who just happened to be the local accountant. And 2 years later, he got arrested for fraud and corruption. So there wasn't a very good history of Fraser Coast Council.
Yeah,
So
somebody had been building their own personal money well there by the sound of it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure that there are lots of other councils in the same boat. It's just nobody's had the guts until now to take them to task.
Well, I've seen some of the paperwork that you've been putting together, Cam. It's very impressive. We should also point out that you are, I don't know, are we allowed to say what you are?
Justice of the Peace.
Yes. So you do have some legal knowledge as well.
Commonwealth public official, Crown appointed.
Yep.
Not corporate appointed.
Yep.
So my appointment was through the Archbishop of Canterbury in England, not the false queen here.
Right. Okay.
So my oath of allegiance is to the Crown of England, not the Queen of Australia, the false entity.
So you've been working fairly solidly and not quietly on this homeless thing that's going. You're putting together the homeless register on the Sunshine Coast, and this is available to My Places all over Australia. The register that you've
put
created.
it up on the My Place. It's up on the My Place
.org,
page
My Place
on Facebook.
Australia.
It's on Signal. It's on Telegram. So, yeah, all the documents have been uploaded for people to read and send the feedback to myself or Greg.
Now, you've been working on this pretty solidly and been talking about it for a couple of weeks. You have begun formulating a letter to council that will hold them to account.
Yeah.
What is the next step? How do you get a deal out of council here?
What we propose to do is once we've got all the facts from the various charity groups that are helping, like there's a group in Callum, they call themselves, they're a food bank, and apparently they're feeding quite a number of homeless families in Callum. And if you go for a drive to Callum and go to the foreshore near Stoomer's Creek, you'll see multiple tents of people living in tents. Mullaney has got multiple people living in tents or in backyards. The men's shelter, I believe, is helping some 8 to 10 people a day.
Wow.
So there's quite a few. Yeah, I just had no idea of the amount of homelessness on the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah, well, when we were living on the Sunshine Coast,
it's turning into more than just a couple of hundred.
Yeah, no. When we were living on the Sunshine Coast, the numbers then were about 2,500 living rough every night. Men, women, and children. I believe that number is closer to. Yep. I believe now that number is closer to 3,500. You mentioned car parks. There is a car park that has become reasonably well known along the Bruce Highway as a place where displaced folks tend to congregate at night. I've been into that car park. I've slept in that car park. They're a little community in there, and with new people coming in every day, and some might leave, some might come in the next day. It is great to see that they are also a focus of what My Place in the Sunshine Coast are doing too. So it's no small measure. How are you finding with the register? How are you finding the people when you're approaching them and getting their story, wanting to put them on the register? Are they willing?
I was quite surprised at the support that we're getting. And like I said earlier, if I did say it earlier, we are like an orchestra. We're all playing the same song, but attacking it from different angles. So imagine an orchestra is all playing the same song, but it's lots of different instruments. So each one of us is a different instrument, and we're attacking or proceeding in a different direction, but all with the same end goal.
Yeah.
So
how?
I'm just
Sorry.
amazed at the support we're getting from these various community groups who are happy to provide information. And once we've got, and I'm hoping it'll be by the end of the week or early next week, because we need to do this pretty quick, because it's very, very interesting that the Sunshine Coast Council put out this today. Their next
Yes.
general meeting on the 27th of July, their agenda is all about housing and homelessness action plan 2023. Now, I sent you a copy of that.
Yep.
If you look right down the bottom.
Let me just see if I can bring it up here a second. I've got to try and find the right. Is that the? Oh no, that's the draft plan. Hang on, I've got a few more here, and I'll have to bring up.
And then you have this one. The where are the camera? Sunshine Coast Smart City Framework.
Yeah, that's one that people have been talking about for a little while and not believing that the Sunshine Coast had anything to do with.
What?
How wrong would they be? I guess, Cam, you spent a few hours digging that little gem out of the Sunshine Coast Council website. I imagine it would have been buried fairly deeply.
Yeah, and when you look at the plan here, and you look at this meeting they're having, and I've sort of blended the two, and I can see, and I might be a conspiracy theorist, I might be barking down the wrong tree, but when you look at the dots, join the dots, and you look at these two plans, and you look at what they've done at Aura City and around Caloundra West, and they're saying in here that they've got this great plan to house people by the year 2025. Well, that's well and good, mate, but, what are you going to do between now and 2025?
Yeah, exactly.
Kicking them off this land where the community, under common law, is protecting its brothers and sisters and keeping them safe, and you want to kick these people off the street. What are you going to do with them when you kick them out of these places? Put them back in the street where they're not safe, and because of their situation, they may turn to crime. We don't know. People do desperate things when they're desperate.
Yes, they do.
I look at this and I think, I know what's going on here. The smart city. Yeah, let's put all these homeless people into the smart city where we can tag them and watch them and, let them own nothing and be happy.
One of the Roys brings up a good point. $861 million budget for Moreton Bay Regional Council coming up in the next financial year. That's a fairly sizable budget. And I realise that they're a different council to the Sunshine Coast Council, but I can't imagine Sunshine Coast Council's overall budget
Sunshine Coast Council is $450 million in debt.
Wow.
Hence, they've put up the bloody rates by $100 by yearly. So my rates went from $830 to $930.
Right. And they'll stay that way for next year.
I paid $830. Now in August they've sent me a bill for $930. I wonder why. To pay off their debt.
Yep. That'll be exactly what it is.
So many things that they're doing, and that's what I said. I'm attacking them on the humanitarian side, and I'm also using their own bullshit legislation, such as the Corporate Act. And if you read the Corporate Act, Section 170, it clearly states that it is inconsistent with the gratitude. Oh, yeah, right. It clearly states there that they must act in a caring way, right? Well, where's the caring way that they're acting? They're not acting in a caring way.
They're not in any caring way.
Section 180, it says they must show care and diligence towards their community. And officers, and I'm assuming they mean the officers that go out to these houses and say, get off the property, have to use care and diligence. Well, okay, where's their care and diligence?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not. They're breaking their own bloody rules because they're a corporation.
Yep. And they're trespassing as well.
And they're trespassing, and that's the other thing. And I think I put that in the letters that I sent you.
Yeah, yeah.
They're under the trespass laws and the privacy laws. They can't walk onto your property without prior permission.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that, and I think the draft papers I sent you outlines all of those. Probably too much to mention at this point.
Yeah, and there's a lot in that draft plan. I actually have it sitting right here in front of me, but I don't want to show it yet because there'll be people who'll be looking. Yeah. So that's the the registration.
Yeah. So basically, it's the town. Say, for instance, Callum, first name, and that can be the first name of the organisation that's providing the care, and how many times people are sleeping, and whether it's in a car, in someone else's yard, and the number of people.
Yeah.
So when we go to council, we just say to council, well, hang on a minute, there's your frigging evidence.
Yep. Now, can we... Truth Voice wants a question here. Sacking the council only legitimizes the position of power. They're an illegal entity just like our current government. I can understand that. They are an illegitimate third tier of government.
Yeah, I know. But, we live in
but we have to work with what we got to work with, don't we?
We've got to work with what we got. We live in a matrix system, okay? And even though I'm a common law convener and I've done all the common law courses and studies, we've got to use our noggin, and we've got to use some common law aspects and mingle them with their own bullshit laws. And this is what research is all about, is finding their own bullshit laws and using your common law knowledge, your constitution, because under the constitution in the preamble, we as the people, sections 1 to 9 is the preamble of the constitution. We have power under that constitution. If we use that plus their own bullshit laws and show them for what they are, an illegal entity since 1973, maybe even earlier, since 1960, 1966, because they've done so many bloody things.
Yeah, there's been
underhanded that we just all got conned.
Yep.
Unless they're old buggers like you and I that were bloody born in the 50s. The majority of people who were born like mid 60s to 70s, they don't know all the shit.
Yeah.
When I went to school, even though I came from a migrant family, I learned a hell of a lot about Australian history and world history, politics, and all that sort of stuff. And lucky I had a mum who was she was what do you call her? An archaeologist. So, being an archaeologist, I always saw her, reading her Egyptian books and her history books and bloody, so as a young kid, I was always fascinated with that sort of stuff. And as I grew up and joined the Navy, and then, from that, I became an RN and worked for Queensland Health for nearly 40 years in various departments.
Yeah.
And then I studied naturopathy because I could see that nursing was going down the plug hole, because the moment they took nurses out of the apprenticeship style system and threw us into a corporate, university system, they lost all human touch.
Yeah.
So
and that's the thing. I think that the university courses desensitize them to the humanity of their job.
I mean, you've only got to look at since COVID that the doctors don't even have the Hippocratic Oath anymore, right?
No.
They don't even swear on the Hippocratic Oath.
No.
It's like,
yep.
I lost a friend, as you know, a year or so ago in Hervey Bay, who ended up in ICU, and I questioned the doctors because they wanted to pull the pin, and I had to step in on behalf of the wife and say, hang on a minute, the guy's, he's still breathing. What do you want to cut his life support off for? Give the woman a chance to bloody grieve over her husband. And so I stepped in, and then I said to mate, you're a fucking doctor. Where's your Hippocratic Oath? Oh, we don't do Hippocratic Oaths anymore. I said, why not? Oh, I don't know. They just don't do it. Man, I was absolutely
They must
stunned.
have some oath they have to take.
Well, it's not the Hippocratic Oath. I'll tell you that now.
Yeah,
I don't know what oath it is, but it's not the Hippocratic Oath, because we have a duty of care, no harm, do no harm.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Well, they've been doing a lot of harm, and I have very little sympathy for doctors and nurses.
I don't trust them anymore.
Health system, full stop. So no, significant issues with all of that. So all right, council is going to be the big issue for the Sunshine Coast in the near future, and there are a couple of different battlegrounds. Yep. So what is your what's your end goal here then, Cam?
Well, it's a 3-stage process we've outlined, and I think I sent you that document as well. So the first stage is we send the CEO a letter, or what we've done is we send the CEO, the mayor, and all the councillors a letter, also a copy to the police, Centrelink, I think that, and some of the other community groups. So they'll all get the same letter. Then we make an appointment to see the CEO and discuss the letter. Now, depending on the discussions, if they turn around and say, okay, and they bow down and they agree with what we're doing, then that's well and good. And then we'll work with them and give them the options that are outlined in our document. If they don't, then we go to stage 2, where we become more heavy-handed. And we enlist the help of JPs, the police, that sort of enforcement arm, and start using that sort of enforcement arm to, all right, now you're not going to play games humanitarian-wise. Now we're going to start doing this the rough way, if that's what you want to do. And if that don't work, then we go to stage 3, where we start bringing in the media and all that sort of, and really shame them. So,
well, I think I think if they're in that position already, mate, they are beyond shameable. They are shameless fucks who are stealing people's money and making decisions based on the public purse, not on humanitarian or, in fact, the circumstances that the Sunshine Coast and everywhere finds itself in at the moment, particularly in Queensland. I know rents are probably high everywhere, but you must remember, folks, that during the lockdown, Anastasia Fluckersuck decided that she would only lock down Queensland and only allowed fully jabbed people through. And you got through that border blockade if you were prepared to take on the job of a Queenslander who refused to get jabbed and lost theirs. Now, that person obviously probably wound up losing their house as well. And all these Southerners who wanted to get out of the lockdown state in Victoria and New South Wales all decided to come to Queensland, and that's where all the prices went through the friggin' roof. You've all come up, cashed up, and done your great thing. And we can only lay the blame fairly and squarely at the feet of Anastasia Pluckerfuck and her corrupt Labor government for helping this position materialize the way that it has. Such a huge influx. There were 15,000 people turned up in Queensland in 3 weeks at the border, all of them prepared to take jobs. They were also given over $1,000 incentive. So once you got an address, you could apply to a certain agency and you would get your $1,000 or $1,500, I think it was, for coming up to Queensland. Not only will we give you a job and let you through the border, but we'll give you money as well. That wasn't made available to any Queenslanders, and they're certainly not handing out money to the homeless people that they've made since then. So Anastasia Fluckersuck, and that is how you say her name. All right. Don't believe anything else.
Pluck a chook.
No. The actual pronunciation is phallasuck.
Right. Right.
Phallasuck is the actual pronunciation for this bitch. So let's stop with the bucket bouquet kind of thing, shall we? Let's call it for what it is. It's a phallasuck. Not a palaszczuk, it's a phallasuck. It's a bitch of a thing, mate. I cannot
you look
believe
at our
that
local
somebody
council,
so stupid has been put in charge of
$450 million in debt. And you know why we're in debt to that amount of money? Because they've had to put in all this infrastructure for the smart cities, right? The new town hall. There was nothing wrong with the old town hall. They had to build a new one that was smart, right?
Yeah.
So one of our arguments in our submission is, okay, then what are you going to do with the old town hall? Why can't you convert that into a homeless centre or a shelter? No. What are they going to do with it? Probably sell it to one of their fucking mates at a special price.
Yep,
just like they do with all their other mates that they give little jobs to, jobs for the boys.
Yeah.
Now, what happened to the old days where your council fixed your paths, fixed everything, your water, everything was done by council. Now it's all set out to your mates, you know, the Unity Water, and it's sent out to private plumbers and private electricians, and the gardeners, and none of it's done by council.
I know from experience, you have to apply to council to become a preferred contractor to them.
Yeah.
And that way they know they have you under their thumb. So they've already sussed you out. They you've had to jump through 50 different circles and hoops to, achieve whatever tick they needed in their box. And I've got to tell you too, the last time that I was working or had to do a job for a council, I was required to go and get insurances and all sorts of things that have absolutely no bearing on me or my business or anything else. But it was just, that's the box that has to be ticked, and you'll go and get it. And the big joke of it was, one of the things they wanted was income protection insurance. In my situation. Yeah, great. That's good. So no, councils arrange their contractors the way that they like them, and it may not be because of the quality of the work the contractor provides. It could be much more like the quality of the kickback their mate gives them.
Yeah.
So,
and the other thing that we've got here on the Sunny Coast too is, because we're supposed to be hosting the Commonwealth Games or whatever it is, so they've gone out and borrowed us an enormous amount of money and put us all into great debt, so they can upgrade the stadium and put in a rail network and all this sort of bullshit. You can hardly drive up Aerodrome Road as it is now, and they want to put a freaking railway in the middle of it so they can join up with the smart city. Oh, come on.
Yeah, if people aren't believing the smart city thing is happening.
Stupidity. It's absolute stupidity.
Yeah. If you are still in some doubt that the smart city program is not being rolled out in your area, folks, then you've got your head stuck either up somebody else's ass.
Just look at that booklet.
Yeah. Now
they're telling you to your face. You just got to go and find where they've hidden it.
Yeah, because that's the thing. They do hide it, don't they? This is not what you find on the front page of the council's website. You've got to,
no. You can find it
probably go into 14 different menus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, it's a difficult thing.
And then they turn around and say, "Oh, but we did show you. We do have it there. It's out there for the public to see." Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Not everybody has bloody 2 hours to go digging through your website.
Yeah, exactly. They bury these things, and they have people whose job it is just to bury this shit.
Well, of course.
So they come up with new different terms that could loosely be framed against the document, and that's what they put it under. You've got to try and think of the term they came up with to try and find the document. Unless you just are happy to cruise through every page of a website and take note of what you see, which is in some case what has to be.
Yeah.
J1's saying the right thing. Sunny Coast is throwing some light. It's also throwing a bit of shade at the council, and it's throwing a heap of support behind the homeless on the Sunshine Coast, from Gympie out to Mullaney, over to the coast, and down to, well, I suggest, mate, you say Beerwah. I reckon
all the way to Brisbane, mate.
It'll go all the way to Brisbane. It'll go through Caboolture.
I mean, you only got to go to
Caboolture,
the rat nest in Caboolture and all around North Lakes and there, mate.
Yep. So if you live in those areas, folks, get your council in the same position that Camilo and the Sunshine Coast My Place groups are positioning to put the Sunshine Coast Council. If you have My Place in your area and you'd like more information, then you can get a hold of My Place Nambour. Cam will find you on Facebook there, I'm sure. But myplaceaustralia.org is also the national website. Cam, you guys are
all the groups.
Yeah, you guys are leading this fight at the moment, and like I say, it's amazing to see 4 or 5 groups of you come together and start working on this problem. I mean, that is basically the top end of southeast Queensland is what you're talking about here.
Yeah, and we've actually started a My Place Council.
Wonderful.
My Place Sunshine Coast Council, made up of the same 5 members. So each one of us has a representative to shadow the current member and attend council meetings as a shadow to the current member, and basically sit there as Darren's doing and as they're doing in Yarra and all them other places. We're watching you.
Yeah. And that's the key. We have to be watching. We have to bear witness to the crimes, folks, so that when the time comes for them to stand and face those crimes, we will be there to bear witness and tell.
And don't let the council buffheads in chambers try and kick you out of the public gallery. Stand up to the buggers and basically tell them it's your right to be there under the Local Government Act. Because under their own act in Chapter 1, it says, local government, to ensure the local government system is accessible, effective, efficient and substantial, transparent, effective processes, and decision-making in the public interest, democratic representation, social inclusion, and meaningful community engagement. So I've written here, does this mean local government principles can be disputed because of the word substantial has been included?
Fingers crossed. All right, mate. I'll let you go back. Tammy's no doubt.
There's no time to sit on your ass and say, "Oh fuck, God's going to save us," or "Fucking Joe Blow's going to save us." No, God probably will save us. I'm sure he will, but that doesn't mean we can't get off our bums and actually do something to assist.
Well, I don't think God helps lazy people. You got to get off your ass and show that you want something, and that you're prepared to work for it, and pray for it, and with a little bit of luck.
I say to all my men and women in My Place, I always open up a My Place meeting with a little prayer, thanking our Creator for bringing us all together for a common cause, and blessing our community and keeping us safe. And I suggest that's what we all should be doing, is thanking our Creator for keeping us safe, protected, and the strength to keep going.
Yep, 100%. Cam, thanks for coming on tonight. Really appreciate it. I know the lovely Tammy has probably got you a magnificent meal prepared sitting in the background. She'll be heating it up for you. And,
no, I've already had it, actually. She cooked it early so I could jump on.
Oh, God, she's a good woman.
Bless her heart.
Pass on my best to her, and I look forward to seeing you up on the sunny coast shortly.
Okay, mate. Thanks a lot.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Camilo from My Place Nambour. Great efforts going on the Sunshine Coast, folks. And are you doing it in your area? Have you got a My Place in your area? Do you need a My Place in your area? Well, there's a few people around who can help you. If you haven't got one in your area already, then go to myplaceaustralia.org. Have a look there. You can go to My Place Frankston on Facebook, or in fact, any My Place, name the city, and you'll find out if there is one in your area, your town. and they would love to have you go along and join if there is already one that has been established. If there hasn't been one established in your area, then what are you waiting for? Get onto it. See if you can create one. Why not? It is proving to be one of the fastest growing groups. In fact, I'd probably say the fastest growing group in Australia. It is growing exponentially with many new My Places gaining information, or people wanting to gain information on a daily basis around the country. This is going to be the way forward, folks. We have to build from our communities, up and out. So we start at home. We look after ourselves, our neighbours, our friends, our family. But then from our town, once we've looked after our community and we are on track there, then we start looking, and can we help our community next door, the next town along, 2 towns over? Can we grow the My Place brand, the My Place feeling, the community action in those areas? That's how My Place grows. It's not a political organization, folks. This is an organization made up of doers who want to help humanity, who want to help local communities and locals get through the hardest times that many have ever suffered in their life. It is just a great group to be part of. And Darren Bergwerf should be recognised as the man who came up with this, had the plan in place, and put it into action in Frankston. That was the first My Place in Australia. And from that very quickly grew 8 in Victoria. From that, many more have grown all over Australia. We're, punching up towards 200 My Places now. And very shortly, we hope to be on the road going and seeing a few of them. So if you've got a My Place, bear in mind, we love coming to My Places. So let us know, and we will put you down, and we'll make a list, and we'll hit the road, and we will come to My Places all over Australia to help celebrate you for setting them up and what you're doing in your community. We will be there to support you every way. We will be there to promote you every step of the way. We might even have a few ideas we can help you out with along the way, maybe. But it's your community. You control it. You need to do what's right for your community, because what's right for one may not be right for the other. We need people like Camilo. We need people like Darren Bergwerf to run those sorts of organizations, so that you have clear minds, clear heads, and a clear goal in mind. And clearly, the only goal, well, the major goal of My Place is unity through community, bringing unity through community. If you don't know the name of your next door neighbor over the fence, folks, go over and say hi, introduce yourself. How can we in this day and age not know who our neighbors are? All right, if you've got a block of flats next door to you, I understand that's probably a bit difficult, but you get the idea. We have to go and meet people. We have to create these relationships, even if they're just nodding acquaintances, rather than just ignoring people. I don't know where it got off in this timeline that people will just ignore other people in times of real strife, real strife in their life. I'm dealing with something like that at the moment with somebody that isn't part of my family, but is very close to Laura and I. And it's a difficult position to be in, because I want to help very, very much. There's 3 little kids involved. I want to help very, very much, but I am not family. And the family seem to be not doing the right thing. So what this person actually needs is a new family like My Place. So there is a lot of support in a lot of different areas for a lot of different things through My Place. And you can start up, pardon me, any particular support bent you would like. Childcare, aged care, pardon me, disability support care. All of this can be done through My Place eventually. It just takes a little bit of time to work through it. I did star a few questions here that I just wanted to go back to and have a chat about. J1, if a relative dies and you ask for an autopsy, is it normal for your request to be rejected? I think at the moment it probably is. There was an edict issued during the Jab Fest that, or during the spicy cough, that autopsies weren't going to be conducted. That was a very quiet edict given. You can get an autopsy done, but if the coroner or the medical examiner or whatever you want to call them in your particular area refuses to do that autopsy, then you, if you want an autopsy, need to get a private autopsy done. Now that can happen. I know a gentleman on the Gold Coast who does that sort of thing. He's qualified, just point out. I don't know that he's actually done any of them, but he is certainly qualified to do it. And there are a number of people on the periphery of Voice of Freedom who have the scientific knowledge, education, and background to do the analysis of that sort of thing. But if you are trying to get an autopsy in a suspicious death, I think you'll probably get one like that. But the suspicious death would have to be, all the suspicions would have to be completely unrelated to a cold or anything like that. Anything that could be traced back to the cold or the jab. And as look, pick up the newspaper, look at news.com.au if you can stomach it. There are so many stories coming out at the moment where they are writing off deaths of, I mean, just go back 2 weeks. How many sports stars, how many movies, TV types, how many celebrities have shuffled off this mortal coil in the last 2 weeks? A bloody heap of them. A bloody heap of them. And they're all in their 30s, you know, or late 20s, or maybe early 40s. Anybody asking questions? No, probably not. Those families, would you like to get an autopsy on that? Oh, look, you know, it turns out Junior died of some, yeah. Oh, what was the one I heard the other day? It had something to do with, it was a reaction to pollen that killed this person, that stopped them breathing, that, you know, made it hard for them to breathe, like an asthma attack, except the person had never suffered asthma in their life, had never had a pollen attack, wasn't allergic to anything. But because they happened to be in the garden and they clasped their chest and said they couldn't breathe and fell over dead, that's the determination. So, yes, you can get an autopsy done. You can formally request one of your local authorities, but they have the ability then to just say, yeah, well, we've got a lot of autopsies to do, a lot of requests, so you'll be able to have a funeral in about 15 months. So your dead relative will be sitting on the slab in the freezer for 15 months before they get to the autopsy, then release the body for you to bury. How many people are going to allow that to happen, do you think? I know of 2 people who have tried to, and have, in one case, actually brought a private doctor prepared to do the autopsy to the state morgue to do that, because the state medical examiner had refused, you know, don't need to, you know, it's all to do with the spicy cough, you know, that's what killed him. And they actually brought somebody capable and licensed to do an autopsy, and were refused access. When they went to claim the relative's body, there was a huge fight over the release of the body, because the relative had made it clear the body was being taken to another facility where it was going to be autopsied by the doctor that they had brought in to do the autopsy. Now, obviously, there's a cost involved in that as well. If you're getting an autopsy through the state, you don't pay. But if you're requesting one, ex parte, so to speak, then yes, you will have to pay for it. And if you are getting a private physician to conduct that autopsy, you'll probably have to pay them as well. It is possible. The people that do the autopsies, the privateers that are doing these autopsies, have access to the correct facilities to do it. It's not like they take, Nana out to the back shed and cut her up on the table. It doesn't quite work like that, but it is an involved process to go through, and the state will fight you every step of the way. So just be aware of that. But yes, there are people out there who are fully qualified and will do those autopsies, private autopsies for you. Colleen wants to know, is there a My Place in Newcastle? Yes, there is, Colleen. Just go to Facebook, type in My Place Newcastle, and you will find them. It's quite a large group. It incorporates Maitland and a few other areas around Newcastle, some to the north, some to the south a little. So, yeah, quite a large group. And well worthwhile getting involved in if you want to go down and meet some like-minded friends. When the cops move homeless, where do exactly they expect them to go? Yeah, that is the big question. And I don't think the cops, well, it's hard to know what the cops like and don't like these days because, we used to think they didn't like being complete assholes, and look how that worked out. But I'm sure they don't like the idea of moving people on. When the boss comes out to them and says, righto, tonight you're driving around all these car parks and anybody who's sleeping rough, you're telling them to pack up and move on. I wouldn't like to be that copper. I don't know that I would even go out and follow through on that sort of an order. Because you're right, where the hell are they going to go? You're going to wake them up so they can drive to another car park away from you where they're going to try and sleep, and you're going to find them again 2 hours later and knock on the window and tell them to piss off again. If you're that kind of a copper, you're just a disgrace to humanity. Just a disgrace to humanity. And unfortunately, we have so many disgraces to humanity. In fact, Queensland Police Force is about to get another 500 disgraces of humanity who've just come through the training process. And I think better than 400 of those are internationals. That is going to be real interesting. Okay, folks? Real interesting. Because if an international, like a police officer who has just come here for this job, has gone through the whatever state police training, which is minimal, I think it's 9 or 13 weeks or something they get. If you get pulled over, if you get arrested, if you are charged, if you are in any way accosted by one of these new police, stick around. I think they forgot to do something that's pretty important, and we will give you a tool that will make them prove they have the authority to do to you what they plan on doing to you. And these new international arrivals, these new international coppers, they'd better have all their ducks in a row, or they will be going to jail for a very, very long time if they dare try and lay one hand or a set of handcuffs on an Australian citizen. There is a very, very, very serious and lawful process to be followed. And guess what? Queensland government and the coppers aren't following it. Who said all the dickheads were on the road? Really?
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's ride!